Chevre, how are you? Today is Erev Shabbos Kodesh, Parshas Vayeitzei. This upcoming week we have Tes and Yud Kislev. Tes Kislev is the birthday and the day of passing of the Mitteler Rebbe, the second Chabad leader Rebbe. And then is Yud Kislev, the day that he was released from prison the year before. So it's a Chag HaGeula, a holiday of redemption. So what's the connection between Parshas Vayeitzei, which from this Shabbos all the days in the next week are blessed, and the connection to a day of liberation and the power of tzaddikim? So as usual, since the war started, we added charity. Hashem should help. The war should be over on the Lebanon side, on the Gaza side, and Mashiach should come now. We should win, and there should only be goodness in the world. We'll start with a prayer, which this prayer is a chidush. It's a novelty. It's amazing. It's a verse from this week's parsha, and that's what we're going to focus on today, which is going to be about the secret to the success of Chabad activism. And that pasuk is a pasuk which the Rebbe instituted a new custom, a new minig, which did not exist before. On the night of Simchas Torah, which is one of the highlights of the Jewish experience of the entire year, the Rebbe, after we say the verses of Atar Resod, the verses that we say before Hakafah start on Simchas Torah, the Rebbe added to the verses of Atar Resod one more verse, and this was the verse that he added. But since we say it on the night of Simchas Torah, it's said as a prayer. V'hoya zaracha kafar haaretz, Ufaratzta yoma v'kedma v'tzafeina v'negba, v'nivrechu v'chakol mishbecheis ha'adama u'v'zarecho. So the translation of the pasuk is, this is what Hashem tells Yaakov: your descendants will be as plentiful as the dust of the earth. Your descendants will multiply and spread out towards the west, east, north, and south. And all the families of the nations of the world will bless their children to be like you and your descendants. Now this blessing that Hashem gives Yaakov is very unique. So much so, as we see in the Gemara in Shabbos, the famous Gemara, and the Gemara in Shabbos, Taf Kuf Yud Ches Amid Beis, says a blessing concerning the inheritance of the Jewish people that will be without limits. And the Gemara says that the blessing is Nachlas Yaakov Avicha, the inheritance of Jacob, of Yaakov, your forefather. And then the Gemara says, Loi Kavram Shekosabay Kum Hisalei Ba'aretz La'orka, not like by Abraham, by Avram. It says, rise, walk through the length of the land. So it's talking about you getting a land, one land. You get that entire land. V'loi ki Yitzchak, not like by Isaac, by Yitzchak Avinu, where Hashem told him, Shekosabay Ki L'chol Zaracha Etin is called Ha'aratzos Ha'elu, that to you and your children I will give all these lands, but it's still a limit. It's more than one land, but it's these lands. Elokei Yaakov, but like Yaakov, Shekosabay, that by Yaakov, what does it say? Ufaratzta yoma v'kedma v'tzafoina v'negba. You will spread out to the west, to the east, to the north, and the south. How far in each direction? No limits. So we see that the Gemara points out the superiority of Yaakov Avinu, that his blessing is greater. In a way, Avram and Yitzchak, their blessings are limited, and the blessing given to Yaakov is unlimited, no limits. So here we see that this blessing of Ufaratzta Yoma V'Keba V'Tzafeina V'Negba is a greater blessing. And not only just plain a greater blessing, but exponentially greater. Be'ein Areich. So why is that? Why did Yaakov get that blessing? What does it mean to us As we know the rule in Judaism, that in order for us to cause a reaction, Ufaratzta Le'ela, and arouse from above, we have to have the Ufaratzta L'tat and arouse it from below. So in order for blessings usually to become more effective, it starts with us mirroring something similar. So in order to understand what is the blessing, why did Yaakov get such a blessing, and what does it mean in our daily service, let's start off with the paradigm of Yaakov. Starting from this week's parsha, where Yaakov is sent on a shlichus. Yitzchak sent Yaakov to go get a wife. The difference between the paradigm, by the way, many things we're speaking today, we spoke other times. What can we do if things repeat themselves, and each time with a different emphasis? Avram Avinu had a father who was an idol worshiper, and Avram was told, Lech lecha me'artzecha me'ladlecha me'beis avicha. He had to escape his household. He had to escape the home of his parents that were a negative, adverse influence on him. So get out of there. It's a bad place. That's Avram Avinu. That's how his real beginnings and of his relationship with Hashem starts in a way where he's told, leave your environment, leave your birthplace, leave your place where you inhabit now and you live now. It's not a good environment. Then comes the paradigm of Yitzchak. Yitzchak is super holy. He's the first Jew that's born from a Jew, has a Jewish father. He's the child of Avram. He's brought up in a very safe space, a very holy space. So much so that he was not allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael. He stays in put. He stays in his safe place, solidifies it, etc. But the paradigm of Yitzchak is staying put, solidify, and don't go to any hostile environment. Then we have the story of Yaakov, the beginning of this week's parsha. Vayeitzei Yaakov meber shova, vayelech harana. He's in the house of the Rebbe. Yitzchak is the Rebbe, Rivka is the Rebbetzin. He's in the best possible environment. But something happened. He got blessings, whatever the story of that is. Now he has a psychopathic twin brother who's gunning for him and running after him. And Yitzchak, his father, sends him away from the house. Go away. Vayeitzei Yaakov. Yaakov is to go away. He's on a mission. But he went away from a safe space and he's going into a hostile environment. What happens at the beginning of this week's parsha? He falls asleep. He has a dream. The first place where God reveals himself to him in an explicit manner is in this week's parsha, where it says, V'hinei Hashem nitzov olav, v'yoymar ani Hashem. Hashem comes to him and says, I am Hashem. So when does he get this revelation? His highest level of intimacy and connecting with Hashem happens when he leaves the safe space, when he leaves the yeshiva, when he leaves the environment of his father and the yeshiva which he was for a couple of years before he went to Choran. And then he gets his highest level of revelation. And why? Because this is the story of every Jew. Generally speaking, as the Jew descends from on high, that's one level, one level of interpretation of what's going on over here, from the holiest of holies, from the spiritual realms, from the ultimate safe space. He's sent on a mission of God to transform hostile environments and to elevate it. That's the story of Yaakov. He's going to go to his uncle who's a gangster. And it's a bad place. He's surrounded by gangsters and criminals. And in that home of gangsters and criminals, who's a con man, who's going to try to trick him in every single which way, as this week's parsha discusses, he's going to keep to his integrity, he's going to keep to his character, and he's going to bring up a Jewish home. All of Yaakov's children became holy tzaddikim and the forefathers of the rest of the Jewish nation. All the 12 tribes come from Yaakov. Where did he raise the 12 tribes except for Binyamin? They were born in the house of Lavan. As the Rebbe says in a certain sikha, made in America, made in America. So this is the new paradigm. The new paradigm is the one who's sent behind enemy lines to go into enemy lines and to transform the negative into a positive, into an environment of opposition, and to transform it, to make even from foe friend. That's a new paradigm. And the point is, and the lesson is, the one who is sent further, lower, in the lowliest of lowliest, is given the most awesome, powerful, intense abilities to be able to overcome it and rise. And that's the story of the Jews in general. No matter what opposition, no matter what challenges, no matter what adversity, a Jew comes out a winner. And that's the message in the beginning of this Parsha, Vayeitzei Yaakov Be'ershova, Vayei Lecharana. And that's the verses over here where Hashem tells him, do not fear, I am with you, Al Tirav the Yaakov. And when Yaakov wakes up from the dream, by the way, he also makes a statement, which this statement defines what the whole mission is about. The stone which he put around his head to protect his head, Yaakov says about it, V'evan hazoi shesamti matzeva yiyeh, v'shem shesamti matzeva yiyeh beis elikim. And he says, V'chol ashetiten li asa asanulach, which means this stone that I have set up as a monument will become a house of Hashem. And he says, I will offer sacrifices on it. And he says, I will set aside a tenth for you of everything that you give me. So the point is, whatever nazis, what does a stone represent? A stone represents the inanimate. It's not only that Yaakov will use vegetation and the animal kingdom, because there's 4 categories of creations in this world. Doimim, inanimate, Tzemeach, vegetation, Chai, the animal kingdom, Medaber, humans. The whole purpose of man is to take something which is inanimate, use that, let's say earth. From the earth comes grass. From grass, animals eat the grass. And then humans eat animals. And the animal becomes part of the human, and the human serves Hashem, uses the energy that he got from the food, and he channels it to a higher purpose. So in any case, there's doimim, the inanimate, tzemeach, the vegetation, the chai, which is the animal kingdom, and medaber, which is humans. And the point of everything is that man was sent on this planet Earth to elevate everything to a higher purpose. So this is what it means when it says, whatever nazis, this stone, even a stone, a simple stone, which doesn't reflect some major energy, some major force, some major liveliness. It's inanimate, it's a stone. What's the whole point of my mission on this planet Earth, and my mission in general, is to take even something like a stone and elevate it and use it for the highest purposes imaginable, which means that we bring out godliness even in the stone, even in the lowliest level. And he also mentions, V'chol ashetitn li asa asanulach, by giving charity of everything, he elevates everything. Okay, so that's a statement about what his mission is. Now, how are we going to succeed in this mission? So the rule is, like we mentioned before, about the blessing. What was the blessing that Hashem gave him? Ufaratzta. What does Rashi say on the words Ufaratzta? Rashi says on the words Ufaratzta that it means strong. That's what it means. Hashem stands above Ufaratzta. Rashi says v'chazakta, which means powerful, strong. But the word Ufaratzta doesn't only mean powerful, strong. The word Ufaratzta means to break free. The Baal HaTurim over here brings a numerical value of the words Ufaratzta. See there that it's alluding to the state, the happening, the situation where the Yidden was standing in front of the Yam Suf, the sea, by the splitting of the sea. In other words, Ufaratzta means break out. So in other words, like this, and this is the point we're going to discuss mainly today, practical, is like we have 3 levels. We have a level, let's say, about being rational, because this is a similar concept in another area of Chassidus called Shtus Kedusha, which means craziness, holy craziness, holy crazy, which means like this. We have one level of craziness, which is lamata min haseichel, acting irrational in a negative way. Then we have another approach, which is being sane, being rational. But then we have the third approach. This is what Chassidus demands from the person. It's not enough just to be rational. Just being rational and sane won't really radically change the world. In order to make the world a totally different place, sometimes you have to go to the other extreme. And the way to go to the other extreme is by the way called Shtus Kedusha. You have to act in a way which is good crazy. Good crazy means you go beyond your nature, beyond your limitations, and you do things that are beyond what even you thought you could accomplish, because you're connected to a higher source. We could call good crazy transcendence. You transcend even your own nature, even your own limits. So one area we see this is concerning Shtus Kedusha. Another area we spoke many times, there's walking, there's standing still. That's one level. God forbid, when you're standing still. If you stand still, you're going to go down. Then there's the next level. You're walking. Okay, you're walking, you're advancing, step by step. Then there's another level. You're not only walking, you're running. That means you're advancing and making progress at a faster pace, which is very good. But then comes a level which Chassidus calls dilug, a leap. Because when you're walking, and even when you're running, there's one foot on the ground, one foot that's off the ground. But that means you're still ultimately always connected to the level where you came from. But a real advancement is a radical change in a good way, means to take a leap. Both feet off the ground. And then you're really going to accomplish something. So this is what it means over here. When we say Ufaratzta, what Hashem is telling Yaakov, He's empowering Yaakov with the ability that even when there's going to be an opposition, and this is the connotation, that the word Ufaratzta includes opposition. Not only v'chazakta, you could say there's a v'chazakta, which means become stronger. No, there's more than just stronger. When there's an opposition, when there's a barrier, when you're facing a wall, when you're facing impossible odds, insurmountable, and you think there's no way that you're going to win, there's no way you're going to break out, there's no way you're going to break through, here comes Hashem and says, Ufaratzta, I'm giving you the ability to break out of whatever opposition will be, because you're connected to a higher power. You're connected to a power which is not of this world. As we say the famous story and the line, when you're connected above, you don't fall down below. One of my favorite stories is a story of the previous Rebbe, when he was a young man, and his father used to send him on missions. Once his father sent him on a mission, and he showed apprehension, like it showed that he was scared. So his father looked at him and said, "You scared? You know what avodah is? You know what work is? You know what toil is?" And then he told him as follows: Avodah is dass du a Wand, und man geht zu der Wand und man knackt mit dem Kopf. Und man knackt und man knackt und man knackt, bis man macht ein Loch. Und von dem Loch macht man ein Tier. Und man geht da durch. Aber der Kopf bleibt ganz. The Rebbe Rashab, his father, told him, you know what means real work? Real work is when you're facing a wall. It seems insurmountable. You go to the wall, you start knocking your head against the wall. And you keep on knocking your head against the wall until you make a crack. From the crack, you make a hole. From the hole, you make a door. And you go through that door. but the head remains intact. So amazing. In other words, this is the approach. Failure is not an option. Do whatever it takes. And you have to believe that Hashem is with you. Ufaratzta. You will break through that barrier. That is the blessing that Hashem gave Yaakov. And therefore, Ufaratzta, from this approach, from this attitude, then there's no limits to what the results are. Yom of a Kedma with Safein of a Negba, no limits. Because since you triggered that power of infinity from Hashem, which is in you, you could accomplish. The sky is not the limit. But we have to start with that sort of avodah. Now, what does it mean practically? In many places, the Rebbe gave examples, like for teachers, you're dedicated beyond the hours of work that you're getting paid for. If a student needs your help and turns to you, don't look at the clock. The same thing is when it comes to learning Torah. If you really want to accomplish something, you can't study according to the clock. It's your oxygen. You understand? When we're talking about something that's your oxygen, you're not limiting it to how much oxygen you should have. And the same thing sometimes when it comes to charity. There is a concept of charity which you just give everything away if you believe that this is what's going to change the situation. I'm not getting into details, and I'll speak to your local rabbi. But we're talking about the approach. And this is something very important, when we speak about dialogue, we speak about language. Today we're living in a world where there's certain words have meaning and words have definition. So many people say, what the problem is? The extremists. If we had more moderates, the world would be a better place. I don't believe Judaism believes in such a language at all. Balance is the key to success. I don't believe Judaism believes in that. There is a Rambam that says there's a derech ha-mitzvah. But I don't believe there was any real person who made a difference in your community, in your city, in your town, on your block, who's going to say about him on his tombstone, he was a balanced person. No. If he was a balanced person, he didn't accomplish too much because he was never going to shatter the status quo. It's the people that have strong views, that are ready to swim against the current, that are ready to fight injustice, that are ready to make a change, where previously there's something which is not all right. Starting from Avram was the first Jew, is called Echad Hoya Avram. He was one man alone against the world, the entire world. And that story has repeated itself again and again and again in the history of the Jewish nation. And Avram was called Echad HaIvri. What does the word Ivri mean? He came from the other side. He's on one side, Me'ever HaYarden. He's from the other side. He's on one side, and the entire world's on another side. Whatever the culture is, whatever the environment is, and he, being connected to the right source, understands that sometimes you have to fight, make a revolution, a grassroots revolution, to get other people involved to spread the light, be the light, the small light that's surrounded by much darkness. And that's what it means, Ufaratzta. Now, this is obviously Yaakov, the name Yaakov. Next week's parasha Vayishlach, it says he's also given a name Yisrael. But the name Yaakov represents Yud. Yud is one of Hashem's names, and it comes down into Akev, into the heel. So again, Yaakov represents the Jew who is struggling. He's fighting, and he's going to be successful in his fight. But because he's on the battlefield, he's given the greatest ammunition, the greatest empowerment to be able to overcome whatever barriers stand in his way, and that's what it means, Ufaratzta. Now, let's go to Lubavitch and let's go to Chabad. This week was the Kinus HaShluchim, the conference of all the Shluchim. There were 6,000 rabbis, Shluchim, emissaries of the Rebbe. I want to tell you something which is not so discussed, and I don't know why. The Rebbe started a custom. I started today's shir by mentioning. The Rebbe would say this verse, V'ho yozaracha kafar ha'oretz, Ufaratzta Breakout SPREAD, he said this verse 3 times, Simchas Torah night. I don't know what year he started. This was a new custom. And in my humble opinion, this, while the Rebbe was doing this, and this is what you call Rebbe stuff, I don't think the Rebbe ever explained it. I don't know of a source where the Rebbe spoke about it. But to me, the Rebbe was using the verse from the Chumash that Hashem told Yaakov as he was going to go into a hostile environment and face the greatest opposition and barriers that could be. And with this verse, he was given the blessing that he could break out, break through whatever barrier there will be. So to the Rebbe, by saying this verse, every Simchas Torah, he had in mind, in particular, the Jewish nation facing whatever barriers they would face, but in particular, his emissaries. Let's not forget, the Shluchim are Shluchim, emissaries of the Rebbe. The Rebbe is the Mishaleach, the one who sends his messengers, his agents, in situations where surrounded. They're in situations where there's an enemy, the secular environment, secularism, call it whatever you want. And he's responsible. Part of his unbelievable efforts to bless and to see the fruits and success of his shluchim is to say this verse on Simchas Torah, which is a very holy time. I can't tell you why Tafka then he said it. I'm not a Rebbe. But I can just tell you, this is a chidush. It's a new minig the Rebbe instituted, that we say this verse on the night of Simchas Torah. And I believe that the Rebbe, I could also talk about Motzei Yom Kippur when they sang Napoleon's March, but I believe there were certain things where the Rebbe, using all the powers that a Rebbe has, pulling strings and working stuff to accomplish, to bring success to all the shluchim that are in the world, spreading Hashem's words and spreading goodness and kindness throughout the world and elevating the whole world and transforming the entire world. When you think about the idea of the shluchim that are mamish all over the world, doing unbelievable work, even in situations which involve mamish actual mesiras nefesh, as the story that happened with Tzvi Kogen, Hashem Yirachem. And even right now in Ukraine, there are shluchim that are still there. They're being bombarded with bombs, literally bombs, that are going off, and they're still staying. They're not deserting post. So the blessing should be fulfilled. One of the interpretations of Kafar Ha'oretz, we should leave it maybe for another time, we've spoken about it so many times, is humility. In order to be successful, first we have to have a feeling of humility. Thus represents humility, as the verse, the more the shliach has humility when it comes to Hashem, when it comes to the Rebbe, when it comes to the ideology, when it comes to the virtues, when it comes to the values, when it comes to the principles, then when he has that level of bittul, then he's able to succeed beyond. Like the famous verse that Rebbe used to also say, Mi Yakum Yaakov. How does Yaakov rise? How does he elevate? How does he reach the true heights? Ki kotenhu. When he's small, when he's humble, that's when he comes to the greatest levels. And also, like it says next week's parasha, the Yaakov is the one that says, Kotointi mikolach sodim mikol emes asher sisavdecha. As the Alter Rebbe explains, that also this represents Yaakov's humility. Through humility, in a positive way, as Chassidus explains, humility doesn't mean low self-esteem. Humility means that you understand that you're given blessings, like this blessing of Ufaratzta. And the more humility, the more you make yourself receptive to the blessings, to the power, to the force of Hashem, the more it works through you, because you're a greater instrument, you're a greater conduit to Hashem's powers by being humble. We'll finish off with one story. There was a shliach, and he was given an offer to become a rabbi in a small community in Eretz Yisrael. It was called Yisod Hamaleh. One of the shluchim that the Rebbe sent to Israel in the mid-70s. He wrote to the Rebbe that it's a very small community. A Makom Katan. It was a very small community, and he didn't know if he should go over there because these were shluchim that were handpicked by the Rebbe to go to Israel, and some of them became rabbis in very big communities. So he wrote to the Rebbe that this is a small community. And he wrote it to the Rebbe on the day of the Rebbe's birthday, Yud Aleph Nisan, which is right before Pesach. And the secretariat of the Rebbe, Rabbi Binyamin Klein, had told this shliach, Rabbi Yaakov Vayeitzei, that probably you're not going to get an answer until after Pesach, because the Rebbe is very, very busy these days before Pesach. Anyways, within a couple of hours, he got an answer from the Rebbe, and the answer was, around the words that he had written, that it's a Makom Katan, it's a small place, a very small, limited amount of families. The Rebbe wrote, that when it comes to shlichus, the fact that it's a small place, it doesn't even enter the equation. In other words, if we're talking about preparing ourselves for Mashiach, that means every single place is important. And we can't give up on any place. And we can't measure it small, big. We have to go after everything. We're not forgetting about even one Jew. Every single Jew is important. And this is the point of Ufaratzta Breakout. Our mission is that we're doing the job until Mashiach comes. We're not stopping. No limits. And the Eibishter should see our dedication and commitment of the shluchim around the whole world, and in their merit, the Geula Mitzvah Shlema should happen now. Posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, you're a man in Melbourne.